Hey everyone, Lou here. With episode Arden being the final chapter of Final Fantasy 15, or at least until Dawn of the Future's book comes out later this month though, I have a feeling it'll be impossible for people to read only because it will only be in Japan for now. Anyway, episode Arden was supposed to kickstart for the final chapters of this game, and yet it was cancelled when Hajime Tabata left Square. Today I wanted to talk about, based on my research into the game of Final Fantasy itself, just how Dawn of the Future was going to end, and how I think it would have finally fixed Final Fantasy 15's story problems a lot. Roll the intro and let's get started into my investigation. Every story has an order to go through when going through it. This order for the first DLC would be Gladios, Prompto, and Ignis, though it is not in the game order of events because Prompto's doesn't come until way later in it by importance of story. While episode Sexy Cup Noodle is still bad, it brings up some interesting things already. Gilgamesh is presumed to have transcended since Arden's time to almost become a demigod in some sense. So in Sexy Beefy Boy, he literally kills what is presumed to be a divine being. Episode Prompto explains Niflheim a little better. It explains how they make their soldiers, motivations, and structure of the opposing empire, which is fine. Chocobo Boy's DLC doesn't add much to my build-up here, but he is important for later, so... At last, we have Cooking Mama 5, Ignis. Ignis was the start of this game changer already, as Ignis was the first DLC to offer two alternate endings. One is the game's canon bad ending, and the second one is where Ignis defies the Astrals so Noctis can live. Now, some say this ending doesn't make any sense because killing Arden doesn't mean killing all the darkness in the world because Noctis has to die to get rid of that, but Bahamut in episode Arden did vaguely explain that Arden, well, is darkness and Scar Sturge. Noctis had to die because his death would have made him powerful enough to obliterate the remaining darkness in Arden's body, or something like that. If Ignis were to fight Arden instead, he kills a majority of this darkness already, and it would be Noctis fighting the darkness head on, thus causing him not to die. I'm explaining this here because, Final Fantasy XV's base story is tricky to follow after Luna dies. Anyway, episode Ignis introduces a new theme that would have come to Dawn of the Future, Defying Fate. The original Fabulonova Crystallis trilogy that I mentioned in my Type 0 review had one theme throughout all three games. Sure, that theme was poorly executed because 13 sucks and Type 0 is an abomination, but it was still a theme regardless. That theme was defying fate. Lightning defies a literal god of death and kills him in 13's own trilogy, and Rem becomes a l'Cie, I think, and defies the crystal to make the endless cycle of repeating finally end. I didn't know that because Type 0 is a mess, but it's there, somewhere. So far, we have a foreshadowing thanks to Cooking Daddy himself, and there's something in the horizon. I guess you could say it was a Dawn of the Future, eh? We know through episode Arden that it would have started a new arc. We are fully shown Bahamut, who explains to Arden that he and Noctis are just pawns to the Astrals in order to get rid of the Star Scourge. Yet, where did the Star Scourge come from? Who made this? And why the Lucian line? We already know that the Astrals in 15 are absolute assholes, and with every single one of them trying to kill Noctis early like the Leviathan, and Bahamut reaching Zeus levels of douchebaggery. What am I saying with this? The Astrals made the Star Scourge. Final Fantasy is no stranger to basing things off of mythology and religion, with Arden being Jeebus himself if he wanted revenge. So it's very possible that the Astrals in 15 are based off Greek mythos gods. In Greek mythology, it's very common for Greek gods to just do things for the fun of it. Look at the Iliad in Greek mythos. The entire thing is just a bunch of Greek gods having petty fights with each other because three of them asked which one's the prettiest. Look at Medusa in Greek mythos as well. She was an innocent woman who was assaulted by a man in a temple and was cursed to be a hideous snake demon thing because they blamed her for getting assaulted. While the Astrals in 15 aren't nearly as gross or cruel, let's see what they've done so far. gave an innocent man the ability to absorb the Star Scourge so he can be killed 2,000 years later by his brother's descendant and let his fiancée die. Leviathan almost destroyed all of Altissia. Shiva was originally very cold-hearted towards humanity until Ifrit melted her heart, because fire puns. Titan tries to kill Noctis for no reason. Ramu doesn't do anything, and Ifrit wanted to destroy all of humanity. Now that we've got all the rude astrals out of the way, let's move on to the descriptions of the DLC. Areneus is pretty basic and probably would have explained more of Niflheim, which is good. She probably would have explained things from her perspective compared to Prompto, which I'm sure would have been very interesting. But I assume hers would have been what we call the calm before the storm. Luna Freya's reads, "This is the story about Luna's fate, which not even death can free her from. Her battle to save the ones she loves overturns the destiny dealt to the Lucian king," which already brings up red flags. How is she overturning a destiny when Noctis literally follows his destiny in the base game? That doesn't make any sense. Unless something happens to Luna in this game that creates an alternate ending or follows an alternate ending already established. We can tell this through data mining that happened a few months ago that show Luna was supposed to be playable or in your party at one point. And it was a concept they even tried to do again in Royal Edition, but once again had no time. We even see that Luna was going to be playable in the original game, which is strange as they never mentioned Luna being playable before. Yet why am I bringing up this information? Because of this unused text here. We know that as soon as Versus 13 was changed to 15, that Luna's original name of Stella went with it. We also know that there was an engine switch from PS3 to PS4, so it's clearly not an older version of Versus 13 that remained. This was something from 15 that stayed in, and it's tied to Luna Freya with Stella as the name. This is extremely suspicious to me, and I'll tell you what I think of this single name of Stella means for Dawn of the Future story as soon as I finish showing you all the puzzle pieces of this broken puzzle. The final one strikes me as odd for Noctis. This is the plot of the original game. They can't simply repeat this part, so what does it mean? He can't absorb the Star Scourge either. Only those related to the Oracle can do that now, with Arden being used as a harbinger of evil by the Astrals. This description in particular feels the most vague out of all of them. Obvious, as they clearly wanted to hide things. I propose that during this war thousands of years ago between all of them against Ifrit, the Star Scourge was made by Ifrit as a way to fuck over humanity so the war could be put on hold or cause a big enough distraction. Rather than curing it themselves, as clearly the Astrals are powerful enough to do this themselves, and it's really stupid of them to just wait 2,000 years to rid the disease out of people, they decided to curse the Lucian family with the task because it is likely that someone before Arden and Somnus were born fucked up so badly that the family was officially cursed by the Astrals unbeknownst to everyone. That's the backstory for my own assumption on the origin of the Star Scourge and why the Lucian family are the ones that have to get rid of it. Now let's move on to what Luna's DLC could have been by me taking things at face value and previously hidden files of dropped content. The game would then assume the story remains the same up until after the attack on Altissia, where it seems the game's biggest divide seems to happen. Luna would be in a sort of realm of death. Perhaps Arden whispers to Luna in her final moments before that Noctis was going to die, and that he was a pawn for the Astrals she served for. This would cause Luna to go into a journey with the ghost of Nyx, or protection of Gentiana at her side, whoever, to find the Astrals and ask them of this information. As an oracle, she can get these deities to speak the truth to her. She knows that they can't lie to her, as we already know through her ancestor Aera. She would approach either Big Jackass Bahamut or one of the other 6 who tell her that it's true, that Noctis would be sacrificed to cure the Star Scourge, and this already brings back that theme of changing fate. Luna going to change Noctis's fate. She either kicks their asses, beats up one of them, or Nyx sacrifices himself again, so Luna can run to find a way to make it back to the world of the living in body this time. It would be there that you're given 2 options at the end: become a ghost and be at the end of Royal Edition, thus leaving Noctis to his fate, or defy the Astrals and Luna would be reborn or possess the body of another girl, named Stella. Her DLC would end with her approaching Noctis, her appearance already making Noctis believe this, and the two of them would defy the Astrals and rid the world of Darkness and Starscourge on their own, creating a much happier ending. Yet Arden still does die. Now let's move on to Noctis's DLC. I think that episode Noctis would be an alternate end where Noctis, obviously in the crystal during the strange 10-year absence, manages to say fuck you to all the Astrals and literally destroys them. He hears the fate of himself and of Arden in this DLC and refuses to let these assholes decide he's going to die. This destruction of the Astrals would have likely reset all the damage they cause, similar to destroying divine beings in other Final Fantasy games. This destruction of them would also destroy the Starscourge, as it would be their fault it happened in the first place. In order for Noctis to be strong enough to do this, it's possible that it would have been some sort of remake of the Platinum demo, where Noctis is going through his past to build up the mental and physical strength to do this. Noctis would leave the crystal and be rejoined with his friends and sees Arden, who's lost all his powers from this as the Astrals cannot curse him anymore. With the darkness gone in his heart, he would have been left in a very vulnerable state where Noctis could have had this heart-to-heart with Arden about how they're the two sides of the same coin and nothing but tools in this cruel game by the Astrals that were playing with them. Which, by the way, if this was an actual scene, then I imagine it would have been pretty emotional, as Noctis looks like Somnus, and they both had a blonde oracle they loved. As for Lunafreya, possibly reborn as Stella now, or resurrected by the assumed events of her DLC, she would get to reunite with Noctis and finally have that romantic connection we were all waiting for. You know, something to fix how broken Noctis and Luna's relationship was in 15. This would have been them being together at long last and have a happy ending where everyone defies their fate. Yet, why do I think it would be a happy ending? This concept art. It was given to the audiences when announcing the Dawn of the Future DLC. I ask you all this. Why the fuck would they show this concept art if this event of Noctis happy with his children and Arden being a weird uncle doesn't happen? It wouldn't make any sense, and it's this picture that set things in motion for me. This picture seems too important for me to simply just assume this is wasted potential. Square Enix may have fucked over 15 more than Dojins did, but there's no way in hell they wouldn't show this art without it being an ending they wanted to do. This ending would have likely shown Noctis' son playing with Arden, and a silly scene of all the Chocobros still together laughing, Luna styling their daughter's hair, and Noctis is talking about the others about how bright the day is today. This is fanfiction level territory, but I imagine it ending with a narration by Noctis that's saying at last the future today felt like a dawn, then cutting to his children smiling at him with him saying, a dawn of the future. Overall, this is a theory for what the DLC could have been. For all we know, I'm just looking too far into things, and the DLC would have made the series even more unfair in story than it already is, for no discernible reason. Basically, I'd like to think this DLC would have been the true conclusion to Final Fantasy 15. The true hopeful ending that fans wanted. Does this mean that Square gave us a half-finished bad end on day one? Yes, it would mean that if I'm right, and it sucks. Does this also mean that Square Enix would have made people pay money for the true ending for Final Fantasy 15? Absolutely, and it double sucks. Do I think Square was being greedy? Not entirely. Remember, the development for this game was hell. Everything that could go wrong for game developing went absolutely wrong, and it's really sad. I know people like to blame Nomura for taking forever, and I've blamed Tabata for making the story angsty for no reason other than trying to copy his success with Crisis Core. But at the end of the day, it is Square's fault as a whole. It was Square's fault for not being pushy with Nomura by giving him harsh time limits that he needed to follow, otherwise they cancel the game. And it's Square's fault for giving Tabata a game that needed to be out in stores in 20 minutes. At the end of the day, it's the company's fault to blame, and I think they learned their lesson with 15. People who worked on the game in interviews stated recently how 15 opened everyone's eyes to working on 16 better, and I think this was a valuable lesson that Square needed to learn. They're a company who at least listens to criticism and backlash in some way, shown when people wanted more fantasy styles in Final Fantasy games after 7 and 8, so they made 9, which went back to the series' roots and is now deemed a classic in the franchise. Am I crazy for making this video about trying to smush broken pieces together to make a complete story to satisfy other people? Oh yes, absolutely. I know I'm absolutely nuts for making this video. Do I think I'm right? I'd like to think I am, but watch, I'm gonna be proven wrong as soon as the book comes out later this year, so I'm gonna look like one of those conspiracy theory weirdos when everyone who reads the book watches this video. Either way, when the book comes out, I would like to make a video on it discussing whether or not my theory in this video is right or not. Watch it be wrong, but I still want to make a video discussing if there were any small points that were right. But yeah, I would really like it if you guys let me know down below if you would like me to talk about the book once it's out and translated, because it's going to take a very long time for that to be officially translated, so I'd have to rely on fans' translations, which could be immensely biased. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. And if any old or new subs would like to help support the channel in any way, then feel free to visit my Ko-fi page down below in the description, along with my social media tabs. For any subscribers, new or old, who'd like to help with video ideas or maybe want to talk about anime or something, then I have a fan server linked down below. See you next time!